12:35 on TSN 690. It's Game Points with Matthew Ross. We're here till the top of the hour. Mo Khan here as well. Jimmy G on the board. Stefano Micella helping us out. TSN Matthew on Twitter for me. Mo Khan 19 for him. Our next guest is the host of on FantasySportsNetwork.com. You can also check him out on SportsRageTV.com or Sports Rage on Twitter. We welcome back Gabriel Morency. How you doing?
Hey, what's going on, Matt? How you doing tonight?
Well, we're a little shaken. We have a lot of big wrestling fans here in studio, and just a few minutes ago, we just found out Ultimate Warrior passed away.
The Ultimate Warrior passed away, really?
Yeah.
I was unaware of that.
Yeah, he was inducted in the WWE on Saturday in their Hall of Fame ceremony. He was on Raw Monday night, and he's passed away today. Crazy.
Wow, it's sad news. Sad news from the wrestling world, indeed. But really, I'm surprised he lasted this long. Wrestlers don't exactly have a long lifespan to begin with, and I don't say that flippantly. But it's true, similar to football players. It's a hard lifestyle, man. It's hard physically, it's hard mentally. These guys usually are addicted to painkillers and have all kinds of crazy stuff going on in their life. And listen, the Ultimate Warrior, he passes away probably too young in the bigger scheme of things. But the guy left a mark on the world, man, and that's all you can ask for. But may he rest in peace.
Now, Gabriel, obviously, Monday night we crowned an NCAA men's champion for basketball. Your thoughts on how that tournament ended?
Truth be told, I told you last week how much I liked UConn.
Yeah.
I kind of threw it out there that I told you last week on the show, you and Mo, that I thought that UConn and Kentucky would play in the final, and they did. And I ended up changing my mind and riding UConn. Napier was just unbelievable. Obviously, the team defense is unbelievable, but Napier's vision, the way he got everybody involved, the guard play was just over the top. And it's cliche to say, because you always hear that going into the tournament. Take teams with good guards. Whatever. There's probably about 20 guards that were in the tournament that can light it up and put points on the board, but Napier's like a mini Chris Paul out there. He was a real general. And, it wasn't a coincidence, that boom, Daniels got 20 and 10 because, Napier went where the ball had to go. If they needed points, he would give them points. If he saw somebody was open, he would get them the ball. Boatwright played great basketball as well. And, I say this all the time before the tournament, and people always sort of look at me like I'm crazy, but I took this from Lou Holtz, and Lou Holtz said this about 20 years ago, but I'll never forget him saying it. And, are UConn the best team in the country? I don't know. Maybe. They weren't when they lost by 33 to Louisville 4 weeks ago. They weren't. They had the exact same conference record in the American Athletic Conference as SMU did. They were both 12 and 6. SMU beat them. And in fact, I think they beat them twice this year. So they got hot at the right time. And we see this in the National Football League often. Seattle were probably the best team last year, but before that, year after year, the Giants, the 2 years they won the Super Bowl, they weren't the best team in the league, but they were they got hot at the right time and they won the games. They won the matchups that they had to, but great run by UConn, real special, and a real little dynasty that they have going on there.
Gabe, you mentioned about UConn getting hot at the right time. Do you believe that the experience of the Huskies really factored in yesterday's game, considering, again, Kentucky, a very, very young team, didn't expect that full court pressure from the Huskies all throughout the two halves?
I think that UConn teams, I think, underestimated UConn, Mo. And not underestimated them like, we're going to beat these guys. But to be honest, even right now, and it's funny, if you watch the Fab Five special, and I talked about this on Monday. I said, the first freshman team to make it to the finals is Michigan, and Michigan didn't win as freshmen. I think the experience, it was a little bit overrated because, the fact is, at this point, were they really freshmen anymore? I mean, Napier and Boatwright are just more experienced. I mean, that was just a fact. They were going to be more experienced than pretty much any team that they played. Kentucky got it done on talent and individual play. If you look at their points to assist ratio, it's horrible with Kentucky. You know, there was no fluidity to their offense all year. Kentucky were clunky all year. It's a classic example of what I was just talking about. Kentucky aren't the second best team in college basketball. You know, they're not. But, you know, they hit a bunch of threes late. That's what makes this tournament. That's why they call it March Madness, and it really lived up to it this year with an 8 seed and a 7 seed playing in the finals.
Moving over to hockey, the Canucks fired their general manager and president today, Mike Gillis. No surprise to many who were actually, the fans were actually chanting for him to be fired the other night. Any thoughts from you?
Well, you know, it's unbelievable how fast this thing is going in a downward spiral. It really is. You know, the Vancouver Canucks they were a model franchise for the last, 7, 8 years, especially from a business standpoint. They're almost like the Maple Leafs and Canadians rolled into one out west. I've spent some time in Vancouver over the years now. I've done a lot of shows there. And I was there when they made it to the finals and all that run. And it's a cash cow, man. You know, people pay big bucks. Vancouver's the most expensive city in Canada. And, a little bit more than Toronto. But it's also one of the most expensive cities in North America. And the market, people have money in that city. And the Vancouvers take advantage of that fact. So they just reel it in there, and they were so good for so long, and to become so bad so quickly, it's unbelievable how much damage that Gillis did there overnight. Bringing in Tortorella was just a disaster waiting to happen. And you look at Alain Vigneault, just calm and cool and collected, kind of like Claude Julien. Not geniuses; they keep it simple. They keep it simple like UConn did, and that's kind of a theme that I've been thinking about, actually, since UConn won. And going back to the Seattle Seahawks, what does Seattle do? Russell Wilson threw for like 190 yards a game. They barely put points on the board. They averaged like 20 points a game, Seattle. They averaged the same amount of points as Buffalo did, but they were just so damn efficient on defense. They ran the football. They played ball control. They were really good on third down. And you equate that to what UConn did, and it's the same thing. They minimize the other team's possessions. They hit their free throws at an amazing clip, and they kept it simple, and they played defense, and they won. It'll be interesting to see if that translates into the National Hockey League this year with the playoffs.
Gabe, of course, the Buffalo Bills are very close to your heart. You being a passionate fan of the football team here, what do you forecast the future ownership to be, and do you think Buffalo will still be playing in that city in 5 years' time?
Yes. And, Ralph, everyone's a bunch of vultures here, Mo. Just waiting for Ralph to pass away and let the parasites come in. And I expect more from Jason Lackenfora of CBS Sports. Ralph Wilson dies, and within hours, he's got a piece about how the Bills are a candidate to move to L.A.
Yeah.
Such, NFL head office directive fluff. Let's float it out there. The fact of the matter is the Bills just signed a 10-year extension with Erie County. They're not going anywhere for 10 years. There's a buyout clause after 7 years of the 10 years. So, worst case scenario, they can move in 7 years' time, which it's not going to happen. The Bills aren't going anywhere. Goodell is from Buffalo and the area. Goodell grew up around the Bills, and the city of Buffalo has more money than people realize. The dude that owns the Sabres could take it over in a heartbeat if he wanted to. And so we'll see what happens. Donald Trump's name has come up. I know that the Rogers Group here in Toronto have dibs on this. They were, Ted Rogers got along with Ralph Wilson pretty well, but Rogers can't hawk their phones in the U.S., so I don't really see why they would want to own an NFL football team. So it'll be interesting how it plays out, but I don't think the Bills are going anywhere.
Yeah, and then also, obviously, nice that they'll have 8 full home games in Buffalo this year.
Yeah, it can't hurt. It can't hurt. Although, as a diehard Bill fan, since the late 70s, I almost was insulted because I was at a lot of these Bills games. I was in Vegas for 2 years there that I missed 2 of the games. But other than that, I've been at most of the Bills games here in Toronto. And the Bills players always bitch after, and if we were at home, maybe we would have won. And they blew the lead against the Falcons, and Eric Wood was squawking about it after. And it's like, yeah, because the Bills have never blown any leads at Ralph Wilson Stadium in the last 15 years, right? I mean, come on. That's like the Toronto Maple Leafs blaming the Maple Leaf Gardens in the Air Canada says. Like, really? You guys going to start blaming the city of Toronto because you suck for the last, decade and a half? I thought it was pretty much a cop-out. But it just didn't work here in Toronto. The diehard Bill fans that were going to Toronto, that are Bill fans, they have season tickets in Buffalo for $300 and $400. They don't want to pay $250, $300. It was a big gouge fest, and the Rogers Center just isn't a good venue for football. It didn't have, you couldn't tailgate. There was a lot not to like about it. And trust me, the NFL is huge in Toronto, but the Bill series just didn't work.
He is Gabriel Morency. He's the host of Game Time Decisions weekdays at 3 on FantasySportsNetwork.com. And, of course, MMA Meltdown on the Fight Network as well. Check out SportsRageTV.com or SportsRage on Twitter. Thanks so much, dude.
It's always a pleasure, guys.
All right, there you go. That's Gabriel Morency. 1246 here on TSN 690. Last segment to come here on the program. Did you hear? Guess what? Do you care? Find out next. Vanier Cup is coming to Montreal. Mo Khan breaks it down. Where's it going to be? What's it going to consist of? Do we know any of this stuff? Mo will address that next.